Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of OTH Sports View, a special edition of OTH Sports View. We've spent the last couple of weeks in this room talking about the St. Bonaventure men's and women's basketball teams. We thought we would break from that momentarily to switch things back up to the Big 30. We are now well into our Big 30 boys and girls basketball season. We've had enough go on to this point to see which teams have kind of begun to establish themselves either way. And additionally, we've got some of our most local teams in big holiday tournaments this week, tonight, tomorrow, over the weekend. And so we thought we would just kind of use this time to get into what some of those teams are doing. I'm here with our two primary correspondents in the field, Sean Campbell and Sam Wilson. Sean, we'll get right into our the two teams right in our backyard here, Olean High boys and Walsh boys basketball team. Olean High off to a 5-2 start now. Maybe not quite as dominant as this team has been in past years. Obviously, last year they ran the table, went undefeated, won the state championship, but still off to a 5-2 start. Some pretty good wins over the likes of Maple Grove, Williamsville East, East Aurora, and two losses where they're basically right there. One of them to Chautauqua Lake by a point. What have you? I know you've done them a couple of times now. What have you seen with this Olean High team in the early going?
I think the thing with them is there was a perception out there that Olean High was going to kind of fall off the face of the earth after losing those four starters from that state championship team. And early on, they really showed that wasn't going to be the case. They had a huge 21-point win over East Aurora, which is regarded as one of the best Class B schools in Western New York this year. And really, I mean, they could easily be undefeated right now. One of their losses was in overtime to Maryville, a game that they led late in regulation and in overtime. Mm-hmm. And then they lose on the road to Chautauqua Lake last week, a game they were up 8 going into the fourth quarter. So, I mean, I think they're learning how to finish some of these games, especially close games. A lot of these guys haven't been in that position before. But I think all in all, it's a pretty decent start for them.
Right. And Sean mentioned the losses. They lose, I think they were Big 30 Players of the Year last year, Elijah Ramadan and Ben Ekstrom, and so you thought maybe they'd take a little bit of a step back, but, still will probably be, a force to be reckoned with this year with, the likes of Monty Shoemaker back. I know he's averaging over 20 in the early going here. The youngest, Mike Schmidt, at point guard.
Yeah, he's really running the show, doing a lot of things offensively and defensively. Another guy who's really stepped up, Tristan Snyder. He's averaging in double figures. He's a senior. He didn't play last year, decided to focus on distance running. He's a big track and cross-country guy. Came out again this year and is really doing some nice things for them.
All right. The other team, Archbishop Walsh, here's an interesting situation because this was, they were really good last year, but they lost most of their key contributors outside of the two Kemp brothers, Tavian Kemp and Latrell Butler Kemp. And, here they are this year. They've got these two guys back, but they don't have a whole lot else in terms of experience. And we talked about some kids who have never even really played basketball before, but here they are, 4-1. They've beaten all 4 or 3, I guess, of the local teams they played, Bolivar Richburg twice. Tavian Kemp off to just an unbelievable start, averaging over 36 points per game. Talk about how they've been able to do this with basically a 1 or 2 man band.
Yeah, I figured it out the other day. The two Kemp brothers are accounting for 86% of their scoring these 5 games.
I think it's like 50 out of 60 points a game or something like that.
And Tavian just last week tied his career high with a 47-point game, and it was against a Class AA school in Corning, so it was really pretty good competition for him to do that. He's really just taken on a big role for this team as he really needed to, given the situation. They only had 2 guys who had ever played varsity basketball coming into this year. I asked Andy Moore, their coach, last week, I mean, is this going about as well as you could have ever wanted it to? And he basically said, yeah. And I think they're I think they can have a pretty good season if some of these guys keep coming along around Tavian and Luttrell.
And it's an amazing load he's taken on right now, just basically being asked to score, at all times. But if he can continue to do that, which he's so far he's proving that, then Wall still might be able to, win a lot of these games despite having the experience that they have. Sam, I want to switch over to your neck of the woods now. You've primarily been with Ellicottville and Salamanca throughout the course of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those teams have gotten off to pretty good starts. Ellicottville, 5-1. They are number one small school in the Big 30 right now. Obviously, they have one of the area's best players in Elliot Bowen. This is a team that was pretty good last year. They went 15-8 and won their league and look to maybe even be better this year.
Yeah, I think they return certainly all of their big scorers. It's kind of a big three there, certainly led by Elliott, who's around 21 a game so far this year, but also Griffin Chudy, who's a pretty good forward secondary scorer. He does a little bit of everything, and then Austin Grinnells, who's their point guard and runs the show for them. So it's been so far so good for them, getting those three back and trying to build up some role players behind them, some bench scoring. Their one loss this year was to Chautauqua Lake, which is clearly one of the better Western New York class
teams. One possession game for being undefeated. And it's a good team.
I think if they just get a little bit more out of their bench in that game, they could beat a team like Chautauqua Lake. And if they were able to give some of those big three guys a little more rest, I think that's probably the big key for them right now. They need to get more than just those guys, but I think they have some talent on that roster that they'll be able to do it eventually. I'm just kind of interested to see what they do as the competition just gets tougher. They're in a pretty good tournament this week. They starting tomorrow, Thursday. Mm-hmm. They're at the Randolph Holiday Tournament. It's actually played at JCC. I believe they're playing Sherman and then Randolph against Maple Grove.
Yep.
In the other one. That'll be really interesting, especially if they can get to that finals against either Randolph or Maple Grove. I think would be a pretty good test.
Ellicottville, certainly over the first couple of weeks here, though, it's shaping up to be one of the better teams in the Big 30. Another good team in that area, coached by a familiar face to us, Salamanca, and first-year varsity coach Adam Bennett. They're off to a 4-2 start. They had that kind of a close, tough loss up at Oracle, who I think is a pretty good team, but then came back and beat them here at home. This is a program that had gotten to be a pretty good, almost sectional level team and then dropped off a little bit, but seems maybe back on the up and up, I think led by that Zeus Enriquez.
Yeah, Zeus is certainly, he's been leading the way so far for them. He's a big guy, he can dribble, he can shoot, he does a little bit of everything for them. And Joe Sherlock is another forward who has 3-point range, he's a good rebounder, all of those things that you want. So led by those two, they're both seniors. Joe's actually a transfer from Cuba Rushford. He was a pretty good player there. He played a little bit of guard, which helps him be able to be versatile out there for them. But I think Adams got them playing some pretty good defense. Their seniors are playing like leaders so far. I think things are going pretty well for them. They had the close loss to Springville and then the close loss, as you said, to Oracle. But they've been competitive certainly in every game. I think, again, once they get into their league, that's going to tell the true story. Once they have to play a Randolph, once they have to play Gowanda and Silver Creek, that league is always pretty tough, and no one's ever heads and shoulders above anyone else. But I think that those should produce some pretty good games.
We know if there's somebody who's going to be, committed to it and passionate and really cares and wants to do a good job, we know it's Adam, and I think he's done a pretty good job so far. Salamanca also in action, I think starting tonight, Wednesday, in the Cassadaga Valley tournament. Speaking of some of these holiday tournaments, the big one in our area, starting tomorrow, Thursday, is the IAABO tournament. Sean, as you mentioned in your preview story in today's paper, a lot of good teams, a lot of great individual players in this one. We'll talk about the boys' side first. Going back to Olean High, this is basically kind of a rubber match, but in the first round of the tournament this year between Olean High and Warren. These two teams met in the championship game the last 2 years. I believe Olean won last year, Warren won in 14. Talk about what you expect in this one.
I think it'll be interesting. I guess Warren went through some graduation losses too, from what Jeff Anastasia, Olean's coach, told me. But they have a pretty solid program. In years past, the games have always been kind of low scoring, and you've got to really make your points count in them. So I think it should be a pretty good test for Olean to see just where they're at.
Going down to the small school, as you said, in the preview, the odds-on favorite in that division is actually the lone non-Big 30 team, Chautauqua Lake. Very good, much better than I knew before doing our video today. They've beaten two of the best teams in the Big 30 already.
Our number ones.
Our number ones, Olean High and Ellicottville. They won the small school last year. They beat Franklinville. I think I did that game. So Chautauqua Lake's going to get a matchup with Portville first, and then they'll play the winner of either Allegheny Limestone and Franklinville.
Chautauqua Lake beat Portville in overtime last year in a great first-round game, so you get a nice rematch there. Franklinville last year was in the IAABO for the first time since 2001, which was a pretty big deal to that program. They got to the finals, lost to Chautauqua Lake. Coach Jeff Haskell and his players weren't really all that pleased with how they played in that game.
I remember that.
It was kind of a slow start, and they rallied late to cut it to single digits. So they're looking for a better performance too against an Allegheny Limestone team in the first round. That's really they're 0-3, but only playing 3 games late in December isn't really a great gauge of where they're at yet. So we'll find out a little bit more about Allegheny Limestone.
And Franklinville, as we mentioned, 2-2 right now, and I think any Jeff Haskell coach team is going to be competitive, and if that's the team that comes out of that first round matchup, can maybe give Chautauqua Lake a game if they're shooting the ball well, as we said, and they have one of the Big 30's top scorers in that Sam Erickson.
Yeah, Sam's number 2 in scoring right now. I think right around 25, 26 points a game. I saw him in a game against Portville where he scored 37 and was just really on fire. So, I mean, if he's playing like that, they're going to be tough to beat. Isaac Kopp can really shoot from the outside, too, so they're kind of a nice 1-2 punch.
Right. That's probably what it would take for Franklinville to emerge from the small school division. We'll shift it over to the girls' side, and we'll stay right here in the IAABO because really, of all the first-round matchups, the most enticing might be on the girls' side. One of the first games tomorrow afternoon, Franklinville and Olean High. Here are the two teams that rank number 1 in the Big 30 large school and small school poll to this point. I think they've got one loss between them. Olean High's 5-1, Ellicottville's 6-0, and they're led by 3 of the best players in the Big 30. Olean, Sarah Pfeiffer, who's a sophomore, unbelievable, averaging over 27 points a game. And with Franklinville, 2 girls that we've talked about a lot in these videos, Allie and Danny Haskell.
Yeah, Sarah's number 1 in the Big 30 in scoring. Danny's number 2. I think Allie's tied for 6th. It's going to be a great game to watch. They haven't played each other with these players on the court, and it's Franklinville's first time in this tournament since 2007. So just for them to be playing is a big deal, but then for this matchup to come to fruition with Olean, I think it's exciting for this area's basketball, which, I mean, girls basketball in Cattaraugus County is pretty good this year.
Yeah.
I think this is really the biggest matchup.
We want to talk about that too, but I think it was Coach Samuelson for Olean High who said in the preview, this may come down to what the role players for each team do, because what you're going to get out of Sarah Pfeiffer or the two Haskells, or maybe they sort of cancel each other out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
How I mean, you've seen these teams play. How do you kind of just see this one unfolding? Whose star, I guess, or stars are going to be, are going to kind of win out in the end?
The thing I kind of wonder is, I mean, Franklinville has 2, and Olean has 1. I mean, can that be a difference? But I mean, Olean High can play some pretty good defense too as a team and create some turnovers, get some fast break opportunities. Is that going to be the difference? I don't really know. I wouldn't know how to predict this game, so I think that's what's exciting about it.
Well, and you'll be there tomorrow doing that game. But circling back around to just the area as a whole, we were talking before we came on today that this might be the best in terms of just talent at the very top of the Big 30 on the girls' side, and it is on the Cattaraugus County side of things. We've got Sarah Pfeiffer at Olean High, who's a sophomore and already about to go over 1,000 points. I think she's probably going to do it tomorrow.
Yeah, she's 9 away. So
9 away. Just as a sophomore, you got the two Haskell girls who we've talked so much about, and they're still only a junior and a freshman right now, and they've obviously excel in other areas as well, like softball. And then somebody, again, in your neck of the woods, Marissa Hamilton, who's right up there as well, and right now is a Division, one. She's the lone senior out of that group, and a Division I commitment going to UB next year. And that's another team, the Ellicottville girls, who are doing really well right now. Hamilton's averaging, I think, close to 20 a game, and Ellicottville's undefeated.
Yeah, they're 7-0. They have some pretty quality wins. They beat Port Allegheny, who I think is an honorable mention in our poll. They beat Portville, who's in our large school poll. They've been solid so far, and it's obviously led by Marissa, who does, as we say, a little bit of everything. She brings the ball up the court. She shoots. She defends the paint. She rebounds. She does everything Chad Bartoza could ask from a player, and a lot more. But it's not just her. There's Emily Erlinson, who's a pretty good post player and rebounder, and Linnea Jimerson and Evie Cortez. They're both coming along as pretty good guards for that team. So I think they're a solid team. Everything's going well so far. They'll come back next week, and then they'll get into their league play. It'll be interesting to see how they match up once they have to play Franklinville in a little while.
Right. And certainly we think probably a year's end, maybe the toughest decision in a long time on the girls' side about who among that group and others could be player of the year or take their team the furthest this year. And so we'll talk more about that throughout the course of the season. Again, tomorrow, Thursday, the annual IAABO tournament at St. Bonaventure starts up. It starts with the girls division, Bradford and Allegheny Limestone first, I believe, at 11 o'clock. The big one, Franklinville, Olean High, 12:30, followed by the small school matchups, Allegheny Limestone and Franklinville, Chautauqua Lake and Portville, and at night, the large school matchup. Another Big 30 team we haven't talked a whole lot about yet, Bradford High facing Nichols, who's had success in this tournament before, and then the rubber match with Olean High and Warren. And we'll be back soon to talk about how the IAABO went and to talk more about the Big 30 basketball season. Until then, thanks for watching.